The Korath delegation arrived on station terminus with one purpose in their minds. They wanted to prove that humanity was weak. Commander Vexnar stood at the front of his warriors, his scaled face showing nothing but contempt as he watched the human welcome party approach. The Korath were the greatest warriors in the known galaxy. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had never lost a war. Their bodies were covered in thick scales that could stop most projectile weapons. Their 4 arms gave them advantages in combat that no other species could match. They stood nearly 3 meters tall and their strength was legendary. Vexnar had heard stories about humans, small creatures, soft skin, only 2 arms. They came from a death world, yes, but many species came from death worlds. The Korath themselves came from a planet with crushing gravity and acid rain. What could these humans possibly offer that would impress the Korath? The human delegation was led by a woman named Captain Sarah Chen. She was short by Korath standards, barely reaching Vexnar's chest. Her skin was brown and her hair was black and tied back in a simple style. She smiled as she approached, and Vexnar found the expression strange. Humans showed their teeth when happy. Most species showed their teeth as a threat. "Commander Vexnar," Captain Chen said, "welcome to Station Terminus. The Galactic Council hopes this exchange program will build understanding between our peoples." Vexnar made a sound of dismissal. "The Korath do not need to understand the weak. We need only to know if you will submit or resist when the time comes." The human did not seem offended. She kept smiling that strange smile. "Well, Commander, perhaps you would like to test that theory. We have heard the Korath are great warriors. We would be honored to face you in contests of strength and endurance." Vexnar's secondary eyes blinked in surprise. The human was challenging him. This tiny creature with her soft skin and her single pair of arms. He looked back at his warriors. They were already making sounds of amusement. "You challenge the Korath?" Vexnar asked. "Do you understand what you are saying, human?" "I understand perfectly," Captain Chen replied. "We propose a series of contests. If the Korath win, humanity will acknowledge your superiority and pay tribute. If humans win, you will acknowledge our worth as equals and establish fair trade agreements." This was too easy. Vexnar had expected months of boring diplomacy. Instead, he would crush these humans in days and return home with a new tribute species. The Korath High Council would reward him greatly. "We accept," Vexnar said. "Name your contests, human. We will defeat you in all of them." Captain Chen nodded. "The contests will test resilience in all its forms: physical endurance, mental toughness, ability to survive harsh conditions, ability to continue fighting when injured. These are the true measures of a warrior species." Vexnar agreed. These were good measures. The Korath would excel in all of them. The first contest was announced the next morning. It would be a simple test of endurance. Representatives from each species would run on a moving surface until they could run no more. The last one standing would win. Vexnar selected his best runner, a young warrior named Krathax. Krathax had won many races on the Korath homeworld. His 4 legs gave him speed and stability that no bipedal creature could match. He stood on the running machine with confidence, his scales gleaming under the station lights. The human representative was a man named Marcus Johnson. He was tall for a human but still smaller than Krathax. His legs were long and thin, covered in dark skin. He stretched his muscles slowly as he prepared. "This will be over quickly," Krathax said. "Your kind was not built for running." Marcus just smiled. "We'll see." The contest began. Both competitors started running at a moderate pace. Krathax was faster at first. His 4 legs carried him smoothly across the moving surface. Marcus ran with a steady rhythm, his 2 legs pumping up and down. 1 hour passed. Both competitors were still running. Krathax was breathing harder now. His scales helped him regulate temperature, but the constant motion was tiring. 2 hours passed. Krathax was struggling. His muscles burned with effort. The human was still running, still keeping that same steady rhythm. 3 hours passed. Krathax collapsed. The Korath watching could not believe it. Their champion had fallen, and the human was still running. Marcus continued for another 2 hours before the judges stopped the contest and declared him the winner. Vexnar was furious. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Humans are weak." Captain Chen shook her head. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters, Commander. We chased our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Running long distances is what our bodies were designed to do." Marcus joined them, barely looking tired. He drank some water and smiled. "Good race," he said to the fallen Korath warrior, who was still lying on the ground being treated by medical staff. The second contest was announced. It would test the ability to survive extreme heat. Both species would send representatives into a heated chamber. The temperature would rise slowly. The last one to leave would win. The Korath were confident again. Their scales protected them from their homeworld's harsh sun. They could survive temperatures that would kill most species in minutes. Vexnar himself entered the chamber. He would not let another warrior fail. The human representative was a woman named Yuki Tanaka. She was small even by human standards, with pale skin and short dark hair. The chamber sealed. The temperature began to rise. At first, Vexnar felt comfortable. The heat was pleasant, like the warmest days on his homeworld. The human sat quietly across from him, her skin already showing moisture. The temperature continued to rise. Vexnar began to feel uncomfortable. His scales were good insulators, but that meant they also trapped heat inside his body. The human was sweating heavily now, water pouring down her face and body. "You are melting," Vexnar said with satisfaction. "I am cooling," Yuki replied. "This is how humans regulate temperature. The water evaporates and takes heat with it." Vexnar did not understand. He watched as the human continued to produce water from her skin. It seemed impossible. Where was all that water coming from? The temperature rose higher. Vexnar was in pain now. His internal organs were overheating. His scales, which had always protected him, were now his enemy. They trapped the heat inside, cooking him slowly. Yuki was uncomfortable but still functioning. She drank water from a bottle to replace what she lost through sweating. Her body continued its endless cycle of cooling. Vexnar staggered toward the exit. He could not continue. His vision was blurring and his hearts were beating too fast. He slammed his fist against the door release and stumbled out into the cool air of the station. The human remained in the chamber for another 30 minutes before the judges ended the contest. 2 contests, 2 defeats. The Korath warriors were beginning to whisper among themselves. Vexnar silenced them with a glare, but he could not silence his own doubts. That night he studied the data on human physiology. What he found disturbed him. Humans could sweat up to 2 liters of water per hour. Their bodies were designed to shed heat in ways the Korath could not match. They could run for hours without rest. They could survive temperature ranges that would kill most species. But surely, Vexnar thought, they could not survive cold. The Korath came from a warm world, but they were adaptable. Their scales provided insulation. They would win the cold challenge. The third contest was announced the next morning. Survival in extreme cold. Representatives would enter a freezing chamber. The last one conscious would win. Vexnar selected his most cold-resistant warrior, a female named Vorsha who had trained in the ice caves of Korath Prime. She entered the chamber alongside a human man named Alexei Petrov. He was large for a human, with a thick body and a full beard. The temperature dropped. Vorsha felt the cold immediately. Her scales stiffened as the temperature fell. Cold-blooded creatures like the Korath slowed down in cold environments. Their metabolism could not produce enough heat to keep them active. Alexei, meanwhile, was shivering. His body was shaking visibly, and Vorsha thought he was dying. But he was still moving, still talking, still active. "What is happening to you?" Vorsha asked, her words coming slowly as her muscles stiffened. "Shivering," Alexei said through chattering teeth. "My body makes heat by moving muscles quickly. It is uncomfortable, but it keeps me alive." Vorsha could not shiver. Her body could not produce heat that way. As the temperature continued to drop, she became slower and slower. Her thoughts became cloudy. Her vision narrowed. She collapsed 30 minutes before Alexei finally asked to leave the chamber. 3 contests, 3 defeats. The Korath were silent now. They looked at their human hosts with new eyes. What kind of species was this? Captain Chen found Vexnar standing alone by a window, looking out at the stars. "The contests continue tomorrow," she said. "You can withdraw if you wish. No one would think less of you." Vexnar turned to face her. "The Korath do not withdraw. We will compete until every contest is finished." Chen nodded. "I respect that, Commander, but perhaps you should understand something. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us every day. We survived ice ages and heat waves. We survived predators with claws and teeth and venom. We survived diseases that killed millions. We survived each other." Vexnar said nothing. He was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. The 4th contest tested the ability to survive without water. Both species would go without drinking until they could not continue. This should favor the Korath. Their homeworld had vast deserts where water was scarce. They had evolved to conserve water efficiently. The Korath representative was a veteran warrior named Drexton. He had survived a month in the desert during his trial of adulthood. No human could match that. The human representative was a woman named Amara Okonkwo. She came from a region of Earth called the Sahara, where her ancestors had lived in one of the hottest and driest places on the planet. The contest began. Both competitors were monitored constantly by medical staff. They could eat but not drink. They could not eat foods with high water content. The first day passed. Both competitors were fine. The second day passed. Drexton was feeling confident. The human must be suffering by now. But Amara seemed calm. She moved slowly to conserve energy. She stayed in cool areas to reduce sweating. She ate foods with small amounts of water content when allowed. On the 3rd day, Drexton began to feel the strain. His scales were dulling. His eyes were dry. He needed water desperately. On the 4th day, Amara was struggling too. Her lips were cracked and her voice was hoarse, but she was still standing. On the 5th day, Drexton collapsed. Amara continued for another half-day before the medical staff ended the contest for her safety. She had survived longer without water than a creature designed for desert survival. Vexnar demanded an explanation. "Humans can survive 3 to 5 days without water under normal conditions," Captain Chen explained. "Amara is exceptional but not unique. Our bodies conserve water efficiently when needed. We can extract water from food. We can reduce our water loss by controlling our behavior." 4 contests, 4 defeats. The whispers among the Korath warriors had become loud conversations. Some were saying this exchange program was a trap. Others were saying humans were using technology to cheat. Vexnar knew the truth. Humans were not cheating. They were simply more resilient than the Korath had ever imagined. The 5th contest was announced. It would test pain tolerance. Representatives would be subjected to increasing levels of pain until they asked for it to stop. This was a contest the Korath should win easily. Their warriors were trained from childhood to endure pain. They scarred their own scales as marks of honor. They could fight through injuries that would incapacitate other species. Vexnar entered the contest himself. He would not lose this one. He had endured the trial of flames, where hot metal was pressed against his scales for hours. He had survived the pit of blades, where he fought for 3 days straight with wounds covering his body. No human could match his pain tolerance. The human representative was a man named David Park. He was small and quiet, with scars on his arms that Vexnar did not understand. The human noticed his gaze. "Car accident," David explained. "When I was young, I spent 6 months in the hospital learning to use my arms again. The pain was educational." The contest began. Both competitors were subjected to electrical stimulation that activated their pain receptors without causing actual damage. The intensity increased every minute. Vexnar felt the pain but controlled it. He had trained for this his entire life. The pain was just information. It could not harm him unless he let it. David sat still and breathed slowly. His face showed pain, but he did not move or cry out. He just sat and breathed. The intensity increased. Vexnar was struggling now. The pain was beyond anything in his training. His body was screaming at him to make it stop, but his will kept him in place. David continued breathing. His eyes were closed now. Tears streamed down his face, but he made no sound. He seemed to be somewhere else entirely. The intensity increased again. Vexnar roared in pain. His warriors watched in horror as their commander, their greatest warrior, writhed in agony. He could not take any more. He raised his hand to signal surrender. Then he looked at the human. David was still sitting, still breathing, still crying silent tears, but his hand was down. He was not surrendering. Vexnar put his hand down. He would not lose, not to a human, not to this small, soft creature. The intensity increased. Both competitors were beyond speech now. Both were crying, both were trembling, but neither surrendered. The medical staff became concerned. They had never seen anyone endure this level of pain for this long. They began preparing to end the contest for safety reasons. Vexnar's vision was going dark. He could feel his consciousness fading. He had nothing left. His hand began to rise. Then he saw David's hand rise first. The human was surrendering. Vexnar had won. But when the pain stopped and his senses returned, he saw the truth. David had not raised his hand to surrender. He had raised it to wave away the medical staff who were trying to end the contest early. The human wanted to continue. It was the medical staff who ended the contest, declaring it a tie due to safety concerns. But everyone knew the truth. David would have continued. The human would have let the pain destroy his nervous system rather than surrender. Vexnar looked at the small human with new eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you endure that? This is just a contest." David wiped the tears from his face. "Because humans don't quit," he said simply. "We never have, we probably never will. It's not about winning or losing. It's about showing what we're capable of." That night Vexnar could not sleep. The tie in the pain contest bothered him, but not because he had failed to win decisively. It bothered him because he had almost quit. He, the commander of the Koreth warriors, had almost surrendered before a creature half his size. He thought about what David had said. Humans don't quit. Was that true? Could any species truly be that stubborn? He began reviewing human history. What he found amazed him. Humans had survived an ice age that covered half their planet. They had survived a plague that killed half their population. They had survived wars that destroyed entire cities. They had survived disasters that should have ended their species a dozen times. And they kept going. They always kept going. The sixth contest tested the ability to survive with minimal food. Both species would eat only small amounts of food each day, far less than their bodies needed. The last one standing would win. The Koreth representative was a thin warrior named Krex, who had survived a famine on a colony world. He knew how to make his body use energy efficiently. The human representative was a man named Wei Zhang. He was also thin, with a calm face and patient eyes. The first week passed. Both competitors were hungry but functional. The second week passed. Both were weakening but still competing. On the 15th day, Krex collapsed. His body had consumed all its reserves. He had nothing left. Wei continued for another 3 days before the medical staff ended the contest. How? Krex demanded when he recovered. How can humans survive on so little food? Our ancestors often went hungry, Wei explained. Food was not always available. Our bodies learned to store energy as fat and use it slowly when needed. We can survive weeks without food if we must. Krex had no response. His species had never faced true famine. Their world was rich with food. They had no need for such adaptations. 5 contests completed, 4 clear human victories and 1 tie. The Koreth had not won a single event. The 7th contest tested healing ability. Representatives would receive identical wounds, and the first one healed would win. This was dangerous, and both species agreed to use only minor injuries. Small cuts were made on each competitor's arm. The wounds were cleaned and left to heal naturally. The Koreth healed faster than most species, but their healing was slow compared to humans. The human wound closed in 3 days. The Koreth wound took 6 days. Captain Chen explained. Human blood contains cells called platelets that rush to wounds and begin sealing them immediately. Our immune system attacks infections aggressively. Our tissue regenerates quickly. These adaptations evolved because our world was full of predators, and our ancestors were often injured. 6 human victories, 1 tie, 0 Koreth victories. The 8th contest tested the ability to stay awake. Representatives would remain awake as long as possible. The last one conscious would win. The Koreth representative lasted 42 hours before collapsing into uncontrollable sleep. The human representative, a woman named Priya Sharma, lasted 96 hours, 4 full days without sleep. Humans can go several days without sleep when necessary, Captain Chen said. It is not healthy, but it is possible. Our ancestors had to stay alert for predators. They had to keep watch for enemies. Sleep was a luxury, not a necessity. Vexnar no longer knew what to say. Everything he thought he knew about weakness and strength was being destroyed. The 9th contest tested the ability to survive without oxygen. Representatives would hold their breath as long as possible. The Koreth could hold their breath for about 3 minutes. Their lungs were efficient but not exceptional. The human representative, a professional diver named Miguel Santos, held his breath for 11 minutes and 35 seconds. Humans have a diving reflex, Captain Chen explained. When we submerge in water, our heart rate slows and our blood moves to our core organs. Some humans can hold their breath for over 20 minutes with training. 7 victories, 1 tie, 0 Koreth victories. The 10th contest tested the ability to survive poison. This was carefully controlled by medical staff. Both species would be given gradually increasing doses of a mild toxin. The first one to show dangerous symptoms would lose. The Koreth were confident. Their 4-chambered livers could filter almost any poison. They had evolved on a world full of toxic plants and animals. But the human liver was equally impressive. It could process alcohol, which was poisonous to most species. It could break down medications and toxins efficiently. The human representative, a woman named Olga Volkov, matched the Koreth step for step. In the end, the contest was declared a tie. Both species showed dangerous symptoms at almost exactly the same time. 7 victories, 2 ties, 0 Koreth victories. Vexnar called for a meeting with Captain Chen. The contests were scheduled to continue, but he needed to understand what was happening. How is this possible? He asked. Humans are small, humans are soft, humans should be prey, not competitors. Chen sat across from him, her strange human face showing an expression he could not read. Commander, I think you misunderstand what it means to be human. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not the toughest, but we are the most persistent. Persistent. We never stop. We never quit, we never give up. When our prey ran from us, we followed it until it collapsed from exhaustion. When our enemies attacked us, we fought back until they gave up or died. When our environment tried to kill us, we adapted and survived. This is what humans are. We are the species that refuses to quit. Vexnar thought about this. The Korath were warriors. They valued strength and power and victory, but they had never faced an enemy that simply refused to stop. What happens, he asked slowly, when humans lose? Chen smiled her strange human smile. We get back up and try again. We have a saying, fall down 7 times, get up 8. Failure is not defeat. Failure is just practice for eventual success. And if success never comes, then we die trying, but we never stop trying. Vexnar was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. The Korath have never met a species like humans. We have conquered many worlds. We have defeated many enemies, but we have never faced creatures who simply refuse to accept defeat. And now that you have. Vexnar stood. His full height towered over the human woman, but somehow he no longer felt superior. Now I must report to my High Council. The contests will continue, but I already know the outcome. Humans will win. Perhaps not every contest, but enough. And even when you lose, you will not truly be defeated. Will the Korath accept us as equals? Vexnar considered the question. The Korath respect strength. We thought strength meant size and power, but I am beginning to understand that true strength is something else. True strength is the refusal to surrender. True strength is getting back up when you have been knocked down. True strength is continuing when every part of your body tells you to stop. He looked at Captain Chen with his 4 eyes, seeing her clearly for the first time. Humans have true strength. The Korath will recognize this. The remaining contests continued over the following weeks. The 11th contest tested the ability to survive altitude sickness. Both species were taken to a high-altitude simulation chamber where the air pressure was reduced to match the top of a tall mountain. The Korath struggled immediately. Their blood was not designed to carry oxygen efficiently at low pressures. Their representative became dizzy and confused within an hour. The human representative, a mountaineer named Tenzing Sherpa, remained functional for 6 hours. His blood produced more red cells in response to the thin air. His breathing became deeper and faster to compensate. His body adapted in real time. Humans have climbed the highest mountain on Earth without breathing equipment, Captain Chen explained. It requires years of training, but it is possible. Our bodies can adjust to almost any environment given time. 8 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 12th contest tested the ability to survive pressure changes. Representatives would be subjected to rapidly changing air pressure, simulating the experience of diving deep underwater and returning to the surface. The Korath could not handle the pressure changes. Their bodies were rigid, their internal structures fixed. The pressure changes caused painful injuries. The human representative, another diver, handled the changes smoothly. Human bodies were flexible. Their tissues could compress and expand. Their ears could equalize pressure. Their sinuses could adjust. 9 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 13th contest tested the ability to survive G-forces. Representatives would be spun in a centrifuge until they lost consciousness. The Korath passed out at 4 Gs. Their blood pooled in their lower bodies, starving their brains of oxygen. The human representative, a fighter pilot named Jack Morrison, remained conscious at 9 Gs while wearing special compression clothing. Even without the clothing, he could have handled 6 or 7 Gs. Humans learned to fly faster than our bodies were designed for, Jack explained afterward. So we invented ways to compensate. We trained our bodies. We built special suits. We pushed ourselves beyond our limits because that is what humans do. 10 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 14th contest tested the ability to survive illness. This was controversial, and many Korath objected to it, but Vexnar insisted. He needed to understand the full extent of human resilience. Both representatives were exposed to a mild pathogen that caused fever and weakness. The first one to recover fully would win. The Korath representative took 3 weeks to recover. His immune system fought the pathogen slowly, grinding it down through persistent defense. The human representative, a doctor named Sarah Williams, recovered in 6 days. Her immune system mounted an aggressive counterattack, producing antibodies that specifically targeted the pathogen and destroyed it efficiently. Human immune systems are adaptive, Captain Chen explained. They learn from each infection and remember it forever. The same pathogen cannot make us sick twice. This is why we survive plagues. We adapt faster than the diseases. 11 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 15th contest tested the ability to survive electrical shock. Representatives would receive increasingly powerful electric shocks until they could not continue. The Korath were confident in this contest. Their scales provided some natural insulation. Their nervous systems were robust. But humans had their own advantages. Their hearts were resistant to electrical disruption. Their muscles could clamp onto things involuntarily, preventing them from being thrown by the shock. Their survival instinct was incredibly powerful. The human representative, an electrician named Jorge Martinez, who had survived a lightning strike as a teenager, endured shocks that should have killed him. His heart stopped twice, and twice it started again on its own. Human hearts are stubborn, Jorge said afterward. They do not want to stop beating. Sometimes they restart themselves even after they have stopped. We call this the will to live. 12 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The Korath High Council received Vexnar's reports with disbelief. They demanded more contests, certain that humanity must have some weakness the Korath could exploit. The 16th contest tested the ability to survive isolation. Representatives would be placed in complete solitary confinement with no contact with others. The first one to show signs of psychological breakdown would lose. The Korath were social creatures. They lived in family groups and worked in teams. Isolation was torture for them. The human representative, a monk named Brother Thomas who had spent 10 years in silent meditation, sat alone in his room and seemed perfectly content. Days passed. Weeks passed. The Korath representative began showing signs of stress after 1 week. He began showing signs of breakdown after 2 weeks. He was removed from isolation on the 20th day. Brother Thomas continued for another month before the contest was ended. He emerged calm and peaceful, no different than when he entered. Humans have always had hermits and monks and people who choose solitude, Captain Chen explained. Some of us find peace in isolation, others go mad. We are a varied species. 13 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 17th contest tested the ability to survive sensory deprivation. Representatives would be placed in tanks of warm water with no light, no sound, and no sensation. The first one to panic would lose. The Korath representative lasted 2 hours before demanding to be released. The human representative, a professional floater named Amy Chen, stayed in the tank for 8 hours and reported that it was relaxing. 14 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 18th contest tested the ability to survive constant noise. Representatives would be subjected to loud, irritating sounds without any break. The first one who could not continue would lose. The Korath had sensitive hearing. The noise was torture for them. Their representative lasted 18 hours before collapsing in exhaustion. The human representative, a construction worker named Mike O'Brien, who had spent 30 years working around heavy machinery, lasted 42 hours. His ears rang for days afterward, but he had survived. 15 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 19th contest tested the ability to survive motion sickness. Representatives would be subjected to continuous spinning and tilting that confused their balance systems. The Korath could not handle it. Their 4 eyes and complex balance systems made them extremely susceptible to motion sickness. Their representative vomited within minutes and had to be removed. The human representative, a sailor named Maria Santos, lasted 6 hours. She was uncomfortable but functional throughout. 16 victories, 2 ties, 0 Korath victories. The 20th and final contest was chosen by mutual agreement. It would test overall resilience. Representatives would face a series of challenges, one after another, with no rest in between. The last one standing would win. Vexnar chose to represent the Korath himself. He would not let his species suffer another defeat without being there to share in it. Captain Chen chose to represent humanity. She said it was only fair. The challenges began at dawn. First was running, then swimming, then climbing. Then came the heat chamber, the cold chamber, the thin air. Then came the pain tests, the hunger tests, the thirst tests. Then came the isolation and the noise and the spinning. Hour after hour, Vexnar and Captain Chen continued. Both were exhausted. Both were in pain. Both wanted to stop. But neither stopped. 12 hours passed. Vexnar's scales were cracked and his muscles were failing. Chen's skin was pale and her hands were shaking, but they continued. 18 hours passed. Vexnar could barely see. Chen could barely walk, but they continued. 24 hours passed. Both competitors were operating on pure will. Their bodies had given up long ago. Only their minds kept them moving. At the 26th hour, Vexnar felt his legs give way. He tried to rise but could not. His body had finally reached its absolute limit. He looked at Captain Chen. She was still standing, but barely. Her eyes were unfocused and her breath was ragged. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. "How?" Vexnar gasped. "How are you still standing?" Chen smiled weakly. "Because if I fall, I might not get back up, so I won't fall, not until the contest is over." Vexnar understood then. Humans did not win because they were stronger or faster or tougher. They won because they simply refused to accept defeat. They would keep going until their bodies literally could not continue, and sometimes even beyond that. "The contest is over," Vexnar said. "Humanity has won." Captain Chen nodded slowly, then she collapsed. Medical teams rushed to help both competitors. Both would recover fully, but both would need extensive rest. As Vexnar was carried away on a stretcher, he gave orders to his warriors. "Contact the High Council. Tell them the exchange program is complete. Tell them humans are not prey. Tell them humans are not weak. Tell them humans are perhaps the most dangerous species we have ever encountered." "Dangerous?" his second-in-command asked. "But they are friendly. They offered fair terms." "That is what makes them dangerous," Vexnar replied. "They are friendly because they choose to be. They offer fair terms because they prefer peace. But if they were ever forced to fight, truly fight, I do not think they would ever stop. I do not think anything could make them stop." 6 months later, the treaty between the Korath Empire and the Human Confederacy was signed. It established humanity as equals to the Korath, with full trade rights and mutual defense agreements. The Galactic Council watched with interest. Many species had expected the Korath to crush humanity. Instead, the great warriors of the known galaxy had acknowledged these soft, small creatures as their equals. Other species began to take notice of humanity. Some sent their own challengers to test human resilience. All of them failed. The Vorth tried to beat humans in a contest of regeneration. They lost when the human representative regrew a fingertip faster than the Vorth could regenerate a scale. The Threll tried to beat humans in a contest of immune response. They lost when the human representative fought off a pathogen that had killed Threll for centuries. The Nexar tried to beat humans in a contest of pain tolerance. They lost when the human representative continued competing after breaking 3 bones in her hand. One by one, the species of the galaxy learned what the Korath had learned. Humans were not strong in the traditional sense. They were not fast or tough or powerful, but they were resilient beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Commander Vexnar, now an ambassador, often told the story of the contests. He had become a friend to Captain Chen, and they frequently appeared together at diplomatic events. "I thought I knew what strength was," Vexnar would say. "I thought it was muscle and scale and the ability to break your enemies. I was wrong." "True strength," Captain Chen would add, "is the ability to keep going when everything tells you to stop. True strength is getting up one more time than you fall down. True strength is refusing to surrender even when surrender seems like the only option." "Humans have this strength," Vexnar would conclude. "They have it in abundance, and that is why the Korath acknowledge them as equals. That is why the galaxy should respect them. That is why any species that thinks humans are weak is making a terrible, terrible mistake." The story spread across the galaxy. It became legend, then myth, then simple common knowledge. Every species knew the truth. Humans were small. Humans were soft. Humans were fragile compared to the great warrior races of the galaxy. But humans did not quit. Humans did not surrender. Humans kept going until they won or they died. And that, every species agreed, made humans the most resilient creatures in the known galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen retired from the diplomatic corps 5 years after the Korath contests. She spent her remaining years teaching young diplomats about the importance of resilience. "Every species in the galaxy has something special about them," she would say. "The Korath have their strength, the Vorth have their regeneration, the Threll have their speed, but humans have something more valuable than any of those things. We have the ability to refuse defeat." Her students would ask how they could develop this ability, and she would smile. "You already have it," she would say. "It is in your blood, in your bones, in the very structure of your cells. Your ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and wars and disasters. They survived because they refused to give up, and that refusal lives on in you. All you have to do is remember it." In the end, the story of the Korath contests became required reading at every human diplomatic academy. It was taught not as a story of victory, but as a reminder of what it meant to be human. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. There were species that could fly and species that could breathe underwater and species that could survive in the vacuum of space. There were species stronger than humans and faster than humans and smarter than humans. But there was no species more resilient than humans. There was no species more stubborn. There was no species more determined to survive. And that, humanity believed, was worth more than any other ability in the universe. The Korath agreed. After all, they had tested it themselves. And they had lost every single contest completely.